The rain pounded the streets of Seattle, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the chaos in my heart. I was 24, alone in a city that felt too big, too cold, for someone like me, a black kid from a small Georgia town, hiding a secret that could unravel everything. My name is Caleb Winters, and I'd spent my life fearing I'd never know love. Not the kind that felt real, not the kind I could claim without shame. I stood under the awning of a coffee shop on Pike Street, clutching a soggy newspaper, my breath fogging in the autumn chill. The world moved around me. Couples laughing, friends sharing umbrellas, but I felt like a ghost, invisible, unworthy. Growing up, I'd learned to bury my truth. In my hometown, being gay wasn't just frowned upon. It was a sin whispered about in church pews, a betrayal to family. I'd fled to Seattle to escape, but the fear followed, heavy as the rain soaking my sneakers. Then I saw him, across the street, through the blur of raindrops. A figure leaned against a lamppost, unbothered by the downpour. He was maybe 25, with curly auburn hair plastered to his forehead, a green sweater clinging to his frame. He was reading a book of all things, in the middle of a storm. Something about his calm defiance, the way he seemed to belong to the world without apology, made my chest ache. I didn't know his name, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. The coffee shop was warm, its air thick with the scent of espresso and damp wool. I pushed through the door, shaking water from my jacket, my eyes flicking back to the stranger outside. He hadn't moved, still lost in his book. I ordered a black coffee, my hands trembling. Not from the cold, but from the pull I felt toward him. It was reckless, stupid even, to feel this way about someone I hadn't met. But I'd spent so long denying myself, and that fleeting glimpse of him felt like a crack in the walls I'd built. I took a seat by the window, close enough to watch him without being obvious. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and he finally closed his book, tucking it into a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. He looked up, and for a moment our eyes met through the glass. His were hazel, sharp yet kind, and they held mine longer than they should have. My heart lurched. I looked away, heat creeping up my neck. When I dared to glance back, he was crossing the street, heading straight for the coffee shop. The bell above the door jingled, and he stepped inside, shaking water from his hair like a dog. He scanned the room, and when his gaze landed on me again, he smiled. A small, knowing curve of his lips that made my stomach flip. He ordered a tea, his voice low and warm, with a faint accent I couldn't place. Maybe Midwestern? He thanked the barista by name, Lila, and she grinned like they were old friends. Who was this guy? He took the table next to mine, pulling out his book again. I stole glances, pretending to read my newspaper. The headline screamed about some local election, but the words blurred. All I could think about was how to speak to him without sounding like an idiot. I'd never been good at this, talking, flirting, being seen. Back home, I kept my head down, my desires locked away. But here, in this city, with this stranger, I wanted to be brave. Rough day to be reading outside, I said, my voice quieter than I meant. I cringed internally. Great start, Caleb. He looked up, his smile widening. Yeah, but the rain makes the pages feel alive. He tilted his head, studying me. You from around here? No, I said too quickly. Georgia. Just moved a few months ago. I paused, then added, I'm Caleb. Evan, he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his fingers warm despite the chill outside. Welcome to Seattle, Caleb. It's a good place to start over. Start over. The words hit harder than they should have. I wanted to ask what he meant, how he knew I was running from something. But I just nodded, sipping my coffee to hide the storm in my chest. Evan leaned back, his book resting on the table. It was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. My breath caught. I'd read it in secret at 16, under my covers with a flashlight, terrified and mesmerized by its honesty. Was he like me? You like Baldwin? I asked, my voice steadier now. Love him, Evan said. He writes like he's peeling back your soul. He paused, his eyes searching mine. You read him? Yeah, I said, my throat tight. Changed how I saw a lot of things. Evan's smile softened, and I swear, in that moment he saw me. Not just my face, but the weight I carried, the fear I'd never spoken aloud. The coffee shop faded, the chatter of strangers dimming. It was just us, two souls caught in a fragile, unspoken understanding. The next hour passed in a blur. Evan talked about growing up in a small Iowa town, where he'd been the odd kid who loved books and theater. He'd moved to Seattle for college, stayed for the freedom it offered. He was a graphic designer, freelancing for local businesses, and he had a way of talking that made everything sound possible. I told him about Georgia, leaving out the parts that hurt too much, the sermons, the whispers, the nights I'd prayed to be someone else. Instead, I talked about my job at a community center, teaching art to kids, and how the city's gray skies felt like a fresh canvas. You're an artist? Evan asked, leaning forward. What do you make? Mostly sketches, I said, shy suddenly. Portraits, cityscapes, whatever catches my eye. Bet you're good, he said, not as a question but a fact. You've got that look. Like you see things other people miss. I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said anything like that to me. My family saw my art as a hobby, a distraction from real work. But Evan's words felt like permission to be myself. I wanted to hold onto that feeling to him for as long as I could. The rain stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow through the window. Evan glanced outside, then back at me. Want to walk? There's a park nearby. Best view of the city when the sky clears. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to stay safe, to keep my distance. But his eyes, steady and inviting, drowned out the fear. Sure, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We stepped outside, the air crisp and clean after the storm. The park was a short walk, tucked between high-rises and evergreens. Evan led the way, his stride easy, his stories flowing, about a mural he'd designed for a local cafe, about the time he'd gotten lost hiking in the Cascades. I listened, laughed, felt my shoulders loosen. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for judgment. The park was alive with people, joggers, dog walkers, kids chasing each other. We found a bench overlooking the Puget Sound, the water glinting like a promise. Evan sat close, our knees almost touching. I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and warm. My heart raced, but not from fear. It was something new, hope maybe. You ever feel like you're waiting for something? I asked, staring at the horizon. Like your life's on hold until I don't know. Until you figure out who you're allowed to be? Evan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. All the time back in Iowa, I thought I'd never be enough. Not for my family, not for myself. But then I realized I didn't need their permission to be me. His words cut deep. I wanted that freedom, that certainty. But the weight of my past, of sermons calling people like me broken, of my mother's disappointed eyes, still held me back. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Evan reached out, his hand brushing mine on the bench. It was brief, deliberate, electric. You don't have to have it all figured out, Caleb, he said softly. Just take it one step at a time. I looked at him, his face golden in the fading light, and something inside me shifted. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was running from myself. I felt like I was running toward something, toward him. The next week was a haze of color and sound, like a painting coming to life. Evan and I texted constantly, our conversations spilling from books to music to dreams we'd never dared voice. He sent me photos of his latest designs, bold, vibrant graphics that felt like extensions of his soul. I sent him sketches, hesitant at first, but his enthusiasm made me bold. These are incredible, Caleb, he'd write. You're hiding a masterpiece in you. We met again at the park, then at a bookstore in Capitol Hill, where rainbow flags hung proudly above shop windows. Seattle's openness was a shock after Georgia's suffocating silence. I watched couples, men holding hands, women kissing without fear, and felt a pang of envy mixed with longing. Evan noticed, his eyes catching mine as a pair of guys walked by, laughing, their fingers intertwined. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle but probing. I nodded, but my throat was tight. Just not used to this. Where I'm from, you don't see that. You don't even think about it. Evan's face softened, but he didn't push. Instead, he bought me a coffee and steered us toward a quiet corner of the bookstore. He pulled Fun Home by Alison Bechdel from the shelf, handing it to me. Read this when you get a chance, he said. It's about finding yourself, even when the world tells you not to. That night, alone in my tiny apartment, I devoured the book, its pages a mirror to my own buried truths. I texted Evan at 2 a.m. Finished it. I think I'm starting to get it. He replied instantly, told you. You're stronger than you know. Our next meeting was at a queer art gallery opening in Fremont, a place I'd never have gone alone. The walls were alive with color, paintings of bodies intertwined, sculptures of hands reaching across voids. Evan moved through the crowd with ease, introducing me to artists, curators, people who saw me not as a secret but as a person. I felt exposed, but not in a bad way, like sunlight hitting skin after years in the dark. Caleb, this is Marisol, Evan said, gesturing to a woman with bright pink hair and a warm smile. She's the curator here. Marisol shook my hand, her grip firm. Evan says you're an artist. Got anything to show? I froze, my sketchbook burning a hole in my bag. Maybe, I stammered. Evan nudged me, his grin encouraging. I pulled out a sketch, a portrait of a kid from the community center, his eyes bright with dreams. Marisol studied it, her expression unreadable, then nodded. This is good, she said. Raw honest. You should exhibit sometime. I mumbled a thanks, my face hot. Evan's hand brushed my arm. A silent I told you so. Later, as we walked along the Fremont Canal, he stopped, turning to face me. The city lights reflected on the water, a kaleidoscope of possibility. You're allowed to be proud of yourself, you know, he said. Your art, your heart. It's all worth seeing. I wanted to kiss him right there, under the stars, with the city humming around us. But fear stopped me, the old voices whispering that I didn't deserve this. Evan seemed to sense it. He stepped closer, his breath warm against my cheek. You don't have to be ready yet, he said. I'll wait. Weeks turned into months, and Evan became my anchor. We spent evenings at jazz bars, mornings at farmers markets, stealing moments between my shifts at the community center and his design deadlines. He was patient, never pushing me to define what we were, but every touch, his hand on my shoulder, his knee against mine, lit a fire I couldn't ignore. but the past doesn't let go easily. One night, my phone buzzed with a call from my mother. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not since I dodged her questions about why I'd left Georgia. Her voice was sharp, familiar. "Caleb, you need to come home. Your sister's getting married, and we need you here." I gripped the phone, my stomach twisting. "I can't, Ma. I've got work." "Work?" she scoffed. "You're throwing away your life in that city. People are talking, Caleb. They say you're different." The word hung like a blade. I closed my eyes, picturing the church, the whispers, the weight of her disappointment. "I'm fine," I said, my voice flat. "I'll call you later." I hung up, my hands shaking. Evan was at my apartment, sprawled on my couch with a sketchbook. He looked up, concern creasing his brow. "Everything okay?" I wanted to lie, to say yes, but the truth spilled out. I told him about Georgia, about the sermons that called people like me abominations, about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, begging to be fixed. Evan listened, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he pulled me into a hug, his arms steady, grounding. "You're not broken, Caleb," he said fiercely. "You're exactly who you're supposed to be." I buried my face in his shoulder, tears soaking his sweater. For the first time, I believed him. But believing wasn't enough. The fear still lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. The next day, I got a text from my sister. "Maya, Ma's worried about you. Says you're lost." "What's going on, Caleb?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering. How could I tell her? How could I make her understand that I wasn't lost? I was finally finding myself. Evan suggested I write her a letter, to say what I couldn't out loud. I spent hours at my desk, sketching her face between drafts, trying to find the words. "Maya, I'm gay. I've always been. I'm not ashamed, but I'm scared you won't love me anymore." I didn't send it. Not yet. Winter came, blanketing Seattle in frost. Evan and I grew closer, our lives intertwining like vines. He invited me to his apartment, a cozy space filled with books and art supplies. We cooked dinner together, burnt pasta and laughter, and danced to old jazz records in his living room. When he kissed me for the first time, soft and sure, I felt like I was flying. But fear is a stubborn thing. At the community center, I overheard a coworker, Greg, muttering about those people after a news story about pride. His words weren't aimed at me, but they stung, reminding me of the world's sharp edges. I pulled back from Evan, canceling plans, dodging his texts. He noticed, of course. He always did. One night, he showed up at my apartment, his face serious. "What's going on, Caleb? You're shutting me out." I paced, my hands clenched. "I'm scared. Okay? This you, us. It's everything I want, but what if it's too much? What if I lose everything else?" Evan stepped closer, his voice steady. "You won't lose me, and the people who love you, really love you, won't walk away." I wanted to believe him, but the fear was a tide, pulling me under. Then he took my hand, leading me to the window. The city sparkled below, alive and unafraid. "Look at that," he said. "That's your world now. You get to choose who you are in it." I kissed him then, fierce and desperate, pouring every fear, every hope, into that moment. He kissed me back, and for the first time I felt whole. Spring arrived, and with it a chance to be brave. Marisol invited me to show my sketches at the gallery's Pride exhibit. I hesitated, but Evan's encouragement pushed me forward. I spent weeks preparing, pouring my heart into portraits of people I'd met in Seattle. Queer kids, artists, dreamers. Each stroke felt like a declaration. I am here. I am enough. The night of the exhibit, the gallery buzzed with energy. My sketches hung alongside vibrant paintings, each one telling a story of love, struggle, triumph. Evan stood by my side, his pride palpable. When Marisol introduced me to the crowd, my knees shook, but I spoke about art, about finding myself, about the boy who'd shown me I could be fearless. After Evan pulled me outside under the stars, "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're shining, Caleb." I laughed, tears in my eyes. "I wouldn't be here without you." He shook his head. "You did this. I just got to watch." We kissed, the city humming around us, and I knew I'd found my home. Not just in Seattle, but in him, in myself. Summer came and I sent the letter to Maya. It was short, honest, raw. "I'm gay, Maya. I'm happy. I hope you can be happy for me." Weeks passed with no reply, and the silence hurt, but I didn't regret it. I spent too long hiding. I was done. Then one morning my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Maya. "Caleb, I got your letter. I'm sorry it took so long. I love you. Always will. Come home when you're ready. We'll figure this out together." I cried, relief flooding me. Evan held me, his arms my safe harbor. We planned a trip to Georgia, not to go back to who I was, but to show my family who I'd become. I wasn't naive. There'd be fights, tears, maybe losses, but I wasn't alone anymore. That evening, we sat in the park where we'd first connected, the bench now a sacred space. The sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and pink, and Evan's hand found mine, steady as ever. I looked at him, at the life we were building, and realized my deepest fear, never knowing love, had become my greatest gift. "I love you," I said, the words free, true. Evan smiled, his eyes bright. "I love you too, Caleb. Always will." And as the city glowed around us, I knew we'd face whatever came, together.